The gunshot cracked through the night just as Maddie Crawford slammed the door shut behind her. Glass shattered. A bullet tore through the hotel mirror inches from her head, spraying silver shards across the carpet. Maddie ducked on instinct, heart detonating in her chest as she rolled behind the dresser. Another shot followed, closer, purposeful. "Shit!" she breathed, pressing her palm to the floor to steady herself. She hadn't even made it 10 minutes inside. Her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She ignored it, peering toward the door. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hall outside, voices barking orders. Not local security. Too coordinated. Too calm. They were here for her. Maddie reached into her jacket and pulled out the small pistol she'd sworn she wouldn't need tonight. Her hands didn't shake. Fear had burned itself into focus years ago. The door handle rattled. "Open up, Miss Crawford," a man called. "Let's not make this messy." She laughed under her breath. Too late. The handle jerked hard, the lock protesting. Maddie moved, yanking the balcony door open and stepping into cold night air. 12 stories up. The city lights glowed below like a trap. No time. She climbed the railing just as the hotel door exploded inward. Someone shouted. Another gunshot whined past her ear. Then a voice cut through the chaos, low, sharp, unmistakable. "Don't." Everything froze for half a second. Maddie turned. Curtis Willburn stood in the doorway, gun raised, eyes locked on her like she was a loaded weapon instead of a woman balancing on a ledge. The men behind him hesitated. Of course it was him. "You've got terrible timing," Maddie said loudly, fingers digging into the cold metal railing. Curtis didn't smile. He never did when it mattered. "Get down. Give me one good reason. Because if you fall, I lose my leverage." She snorted. "Always honest. I'll give you that." One of the men behind Curtis shifted. Curtis fired without looking. The bullet slammed into the wall beside the man's head. "I said don't," Curtis snapped. The hallway fell silent. Maddie studied him. Tailored black jacket, steady hands, jaw set like stone. For years since she'd last seen him in person, and somehow the air still tightened around him. "You sent them?" she asked. "No," Curtis said. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be there." "That's comforting." "Get inside, Maddie." Her name on his tongue felt like a threat. Or a memory. She climbed back over the railing slowly, never breaking eye contact. The second her feet hit the carpet, Curtis grabbed her arm and yanked her behind him as another gunshot blasted through the room from the hallway opposite. Curtis returned fire instantly, controlled and brutal. The attackers scattered. Curtis shoved the door shut and locked it, chest rising once before he turned on her. "What the hell were you thinking coming here alone?" Maddie jerked her arm free. "I wasn't aware I needed your permission to exist. You walked into a kill zone." "So did you." He stared at her, something dark flickering behind his eyes. "This wasn't supposed to happen tonight." "That's funny," she said coldly. "Because someone's been pulling strings for weeks." Curtis exhaled through his nose. "You too." Her jaw tightened. "I've been followed since Chicago." Silence stretched. That was new. Curtis swore under his breath and pulled out his phone. "Change of plans," he said into it. "I want eyes on every Crawford and Willburn asset in the city. Now." Maddie crossed her arms. "You sound worried." "I am," he said without hesitation. She stiffened. "About me. About what happens if whoever's hunting you succeeds." "Careful," Maddie said. That almost sounded like concern. Curtis finally looked at her fully then, eyes sharp. "Don't flatter yourself." A bitter laugh slipped out. "Right? Because we're still enemies." "I almost forgot." Curtis's jaw flexed. "You didn't forget. You never do." Neither of them spoke. The weight of history pressed between them, thick and ugly. One death, one lie, one night that had burned their families into rivals. Maddie broke the silence. "You're not here by coincidence."
"No."
"Then talk." Curtis hesitated, then nodded once. "Someone reopened the Harrington deal." Her breath caught before she could stop it. "That deal was buried. So was the man who died over it." Her pulse roared in her ears. Who? Curtis watched her carefully. You don't know. If I did, would I be standing here? Another pause. Then, quietly, someone wants us at each other's throats again. Maddie scoffed. We never stopped. This is different, Curtis said. They're moving pieces we buried years ago. Counts. Witnesses. Her mind raced. You think my father? I think your father is as much a target as mine. That landed harder than any insult. Maddie shook her head. No. This feels personal. Curtis stepped closer. It is. The door rattled again, softer this time. Curtis raised his gun, signaling silence. A voice drifted through the door. We're leaving, but this isn't over. Footsteps retreated. Maddie exhaled slowly. Well, that was fun. Curtis lowered his weapon but didn't relax. You're coming with me. She barked a laugh. Absolutely not. You're not safe alone. I've been alone my whole life. And almost died 10 minutes ago. She stepped closer, anger blazing. You don't get to control me. Curtis leaned in just enough for only her to hear. Someone is trying to rewrite the past. If they succeed, both our families burn. Her breath tangled with his. The tension was sharp, electric. You think I trust you? She whispered. No, Curtis said. I think you trust the truth. That was unfair. And accurate. Maddie pulled back. One move, one lie, and I walk. Curtis nodded. Deal. She paused. Temporary. Obviously. As they moved toward the exit, Maddie glanced at him. If this is another power play, it's not. You don't sound convinced. I'm not, Curtis said. But someone else is playing a bigger game. They stepped into the stairwell, the air tense and heavy. Maddie's phone buzzed again. This time she checked it. A single message. You're both wrong about who pulled the trigger. Her blood ran cold. Curtis noticed instantly. What is it? She showed him. His expression darkened. They want us together. Or dead. He met her gaze. Same outcome if we don't cooperate. Maddie swallowed. Then let's make sure we're the ones still standing. Curtis gave a grim smile. That's the first thing we've ever agreed on. And somewhere in the city, the past began clawing its way back to life. They moved through the city in silence. Only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional siren keeping them company. Maddie kept her hood up, eyes darting to every shadow. Curtis walked beside her, calm, like he didn't notice or didn't care that someone could be watching. You really think this message is serious? Maddie asked finally. Or is it just a trap? Curtis didn't answer immediately. He scanned the street before speaking. Everything about tonight is serious. Whoever sent it has been planning this for months. Months? Maddie's voice rose. You expect me to believe they've been tracking my every move all that time? They've been tracking both our families, Curtis said evenly. We just didn't know. Maddie bit back a retort, the anger in her chest twisting into a sharp edge of fear. Fear she'd grown accustomed to hiding. Fear she didn't want Curtis to see. They ducked into a parking garage, weaving around the shadows of idle cars. Curtis led the way to a black SUV at the far end. He opened the passenger door for her, and she hesitated, scanning the area one more time. I don't get in first, she said, cold and pointed. Curtis raised an eyebrow. You don't trust me. Never have, she said bluntly, sliding in anyway. He climbed in behind the wheel, the engine growling to life. Maddie's fingers drummed against her knee, impatient and tense. So what's the plan? She asked. We go back to our families. Figure out who's behind this? No, Curtis said immediately. Too many eyes. Too many people who want this to stay buried. We start by finding the source of that message. You mean whoever's trying to pit us against each other again? Maddie said, her voice tight. Curtis nodded. Exactly. And we do it together. For now. Maddie's stomach churned. Together. The word tasted strange. Dangerous. Tempting. She didn't like it, didn't want it. And yet, she couldn't deny the knot of adrenaline and something else. that tightened whenever Curtis was near. The SUV glided silently through the streets, avoiding main roads, until they arrived at a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Curtis killed the engine. "Why here?" Maddie asked, scanning the building. "Neutral ground," Curtis said. "No family ties, no cameras that matter. If someone's watching, they'll see us, but they won't know what we're doing inside." She nodded slowly, hesitating at the door. Curtis reached out, briefly brushing his hand against hers as he opened it. Maddie felt a jolt. She looked away quickly, forcing herself to focus on the dark interior. Inside, crates and machinery filled the space. Curtis led her past them to a small office in the back. He opened the door and motioned for her to sit. "Talk," Maddie said, folding her arms. Curtis leaned against the desk. "The message isn't random. It's a challenge. Someone is trying to drag our families back into a war they can't win. And they want us at the center of it." "Someone," Maddie repeated, bitter. "Not my father, not yours?" "Not yet," Curtis said. "But don't be surprised if it's someone we've trusted all our lives." Her stomach tightened again. "You don't make it easy, do you?" He smirked briefly. "That's because easy doesn't survive in our world." Maddie stared at him. "And what about us? Where do we fit into all this?" Curtis's eyes darkened. "Right now, we survive. That's it. Everything else comes later." The words should have stung, should have made her angry. Instead, they felt like a warning and a promise. "Fine," Maddie said finally. "We survive." They worked quickly, pulling laptops from their bags, scanning messages, contacts, transactions. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by muttered curses or occasional sharp remarks. Curtis leaned over the screen beside her. "There," he said. "See this? Payments, transfers, movements, all linked to a shell company with connections to both our families." Maddie frowned. "So someone is using our family histories against us?" "Exactly." Curtis straightened. "And whoever it is, they're smart. They know exactly which strings to pull to make us distrust each other." Maddie's hand hovered over the keyboard. "We can't let them." Curtis's gaze lingered on her. "We won't. Together." She didn't answer. Her mind was already spinning. Together. Dangerous, yes, but necessary. Hours later, they finally traced the source to a location downtown. "All right," Curtis said. "We go in, get answers, and leave before anyone else knows we were here." Maddie looked at him. "No backup." "Backup means someone else could get caught." She exhaled sharply. "Your confidence terrifies me." "You're alive, aren't you?" Curtis shot back. Maddie rolled her eyes. "Barely." The drive downtown was tense. Neither spoke, the city lights flashing across their faces like brief snapshots of the war they were stepping into. They arrived at a high-rise, sleek and corporate. Curtis parked in a shadowed alley and killed the engine. "Elevator?" Maddie asked. Curtis shook his head. "Stairs. Faster. Quieter. Less predictable." They moved in tandem, shadows gliding up the stairwell. Each floor, Maddie's pulse raced. Each creak, each distant echo made her jump. Curtis stayed close, eyes constantly scanning. Finally, they reached the office floor. Curtis pressed his ear to the door. "2 guards inside," he whispered. "Shifts change in 5 minutes." Maddie's fingers itched toward her gun. "We go in now?" "No," Curtis said. "We wait. Precision, not brute force." The minutes crawled. Maddie felt her chest tighten with every passing second. Her mind flashed to every warning she'd ever ignored, every fight she'd ever won. And Curtis. Always Curtis. Finally, the guards shifted. Curtis stepped back. "Now." They burst in. Maddie kicked the door fully open, gun raised. Curtis followed, moving with lethal grace. Inside, 2 men froze. One reached for his weapon, the other tried to speak. Curtis fired a warning shot into the ceiling. "Stop!" The men froze, hands raised. Maddie's eyes scanned the room. Computers, files, ledgers, everything was evidence. "Who's behind this?" Maddie demanded. One man swallowed hard. I don't know." Orders came from above. Just get the Crawford and Willburn families moving again. Maddie's jaw tightened. Above? Who? He shook his head. I don't know. I swear. I just follow instructions. Curtis stepped closer, gun trained on him. Do you think we care about your excuses? The man stammered. Please. Shut up, Maddie said sharply. Tell us what you do know. Hours passed. Maddie and Curtis worked in the office, pulling names, tracing transfers, piecing together the puzzle. Every new revelation added more danger, more urgency, more hatred, and more something else. You're good at this, Curtis said quietly. Maddie didn't look at him. I have to be. He leaned against the desk, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. I forgot what it was like, working with you. She met his eyes briefly. You never liked working with me. I never liked losing control, he said. Maddie's heart skipped. Control. Dangerous word.
Dangerous man.
They traced the source to a shell corporation registered under a fake name, leading to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Curtis nodded. That's our next stop. Maddie swallowed. You're sure it's safe? Curtis smirked.
No.
That's why it's perfect. They left the office quietly, slipping into the night. Every shadow felt like a threat, every passing car a potential enemy. As they drove, Maddie glanced at Curtis. Why are you helping me? He didn't answer immediately. His jaw flexed. Because if we don't stop this, it's not just our families that burn. It's everyone we care about. Maddie's chest tightened. Even you. He finally looked at her. Especially me. The tension between them was sharp, palpable, like a wire stretched too tight. Maddie swallowed hard, forcing her focus on the road ahead. A long night awaited, filled with secrets, betrayal, and choices neither of them were ready to make. And for the first time in years, Maddie realized she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to be ready. The warehouse loomed in the distance, dark and imposing, like a silent predator waiting for its prey. Curtis parked the SUV behind a stack of shipping containers, leaving them in shadows. Maddie's fingers hovered over her gun, tension coiling through her like electricity. You ready for this? Curtis asked quietly, voice low. As I'll ever be, Maddie replied, eyes narrowing on the warehouse entrance. Curtis gave a nod, and they moved together, silent as ghosts, sticking to the edges of the containers. The hum of a generator inside vibrated through the ground. Whoever was here was expecting them, but they wouldn't see them coming. Not yet. Curtis held up a hand, signaling a stop. 2 guards. Standard procedure. We can take them quietly. Maddie exhaled, steadying herself. Quietly. Got it. They crept closer, and Curtis dropped silently from the container's edge, landing behind the nearest guard. Maddie mirrored him, gun aimed. In one fluid motion, Curtis grabbed the guard's wrist, twisting until the man yelped. Maddie slammed her gun against the second guard's temple, and he went down with a thud. Breathing hard, they slipped inside the warehouse. The interior was massive, filled with crates, forklifts, and shadows. In the center, a desk was illuminated by a single swinging light bulb. A man sat there, surrounded by paperwork, eyes widening when he noticed them. Finally, Curtis said, his voice low and sharp. We meet. The man's face went pale. I don't know anything. I swear. Maddie stepped forward, eyes blazing. Then start talking. Who's behind this? Who wants the Crawford and Willburn families at war again? The man stammered. Orders from someone high up, someone you both trusted. Curtis's jaw tightened. Name. Now. I can't, he said, shaking. They'll kill me if I do. Maddie's patience snapped. She slammed the gun against the desk. Do you think I care about your life? Tell us now. The man gulped, sweat beading on his forehead. All right. It's Damien Kessler. Curtis froze, eyes narrowing.
Kessler.
Maddie's stomach dropped. Damien Kessler had been her father's closest advisor, and her family's silent weapon for years. If he had betrayed them, the consequences would be catastrophic. He's been manipulating both families for months, the man continued, pulling strings, leaking information, making you fight each other without either of you realizing it. He wants control. Maddie felt rage coil like fire in her chest. He wants war between us? Yes. He figures if he can get the Crawford and Willburn heirs to destroy each other, he can take everything. Curtis's eyes were dark, stormy. Then we stop him. Tonight. Maddie nodded, swallowing the knot of fear and anger. No more games. They moved through the warehouse carefully, Curtis leading, Maddie close behind. The shadows seemed thicker here, the air heavy. Every step, Maddie's pulse hammered in her ears. Curtis glanced at her once. Keep your eyes open. They reached a locked door at the far end. Curtis picked the lock quickly, and it swung open to reveal a small office. Papers were scattered across the floor. A laptop hummed quietly. Maddie's eyes scanned the room, noting the absence of anyone inside. Curtis stepped forward, pulling the laptop toward him. Everything we need is here, he muttered. Contacts, bank transfers, plans. Maddie leaned over his shoulder, scanning the screen. Her breath caught. The depth of Damien Kessler's manipulation was staggering. He had been orchestrating conflicts, setting traps, and feeding misinformation to both families for months, maybe years. He's been planning this for years, Maddie said, voice tight. And no one suspected him. Curtis's jaw flexed. That's the problem with shadows. They hide in plain sight. Maddie felt a surge of emotion. Anger, fear, and something else she refused to name. Curtis's hand brushed hers as he passed her the laptop. The touch lingered just a fraction too long, enough to make her pulse spike. She pulled back quickly. Focus, she said sharply. We have work to do. Curtis gave a grim nod. Right? First, we gather evidence. Then we confront him. Maddie's mind raced. Confrontation meant risk. Death risk. But there was no other way. Not now. They worked in tense silence, piecing together Kessler's web. Each revelation brought more danger, more questions, and more tension. Finally, Curtis leaned back, rubbing his face. We have enough. We know where he'll be. Maddie's heart pounded. Tonight. Yes, Curtis said. We end this tonight. The drive to Kessler's location was quiet, charged. Maddie's hand hovered near her gun, ready for anything. Curtis's focus never wavered. She felt the weight of the night pressing down on her, the danger, the stakes, and him. They arrived at a private estate on the outskirts of the city. Security cameras lined the gates. Curtis parked behind a hedge, eyes scanning. We go in quiet, he said. Maddie nodded, adjusting her jacket. Quiet isn't exactly my specialty. Curtis smirked briefly. Then don't make it mine either. They slipped past the perimeter, shadows among shadows, until they reached the side door. Curtis picked the lock and they moved inside. The estate was lavish, but eerily silent. Every room they passed brought more unease. Maddie's hand never left her gun, eyes scanning for movement. Curtis moved with practiced precision, silent and lethal. Finally, they reached the study. Damien Kessler was there, seated behind a massive desk, papers and ledgers spread out. He looked up, startled but quickly masking it with a confident smirk. Ah, Curtis, Maddie, he said smoothly. I was wondering when you'd show up. Maddie leveled her gun. Cut the act, Kessler. We know everything. He chuckled, standing slowly. Everything, you say? And what is everything? Curtis stepped forward, gun aimed. Your manipulation, the lies, the attempts to pit our families against each other. Kessler's smirk faltered, just slightly. Clever, very clever. But you're too late. Maddie's pulse raced. Too late for what? By the time you finish celebrating your little victory, your families will be irrelevant, broken, destroyed. Curtis's eyes narrowed. We stop you tonight, or die trying. Kessler laughed, low and cold. I admire your courage, truly. But courage doesn't matter when you've already lost. The room exploded into chaos. Maddie fired first, bullets shredding papers as Curtis moved to flank Kessler. Kessler dove for cover, pulling a gun from his desk. Gunfire echoed through the study. Maddie's heart pounded as she fired, ducked, and rolled behind a chair. Curtis returned fire, precise and lethal. "You always did have a death wish," Curtis muttered through clenched teeth as he reloaded. "Not a death wish," Maddie shot back. "A survival instinct." The gunfight was brutal but brief. Kessler was cornered, his smirk gone, replaced by fear. Curtis trained his gun on him, Maddie beside him, eyes blazing. "Any last words?" Curtis asked. Kessler swallowed hard. "You don't understand. The power. It's bigger than you." Maddie stepped closer. "Power doesn't mean anything if no one's alive to see it." Curtis grabbed Kessler by the collar, slamming him against the desk. Maddie's gun hovered over him. "We end this tonight, or you die trying to start another war." Kessler's face went pale. He realized he was beaten. Maddie's finger tightened on the trigger. Curtis's hand on her shoulder stopped her. He whispered, "Let's make him pay without bloodshed." Maddie's eyes flicked to him, confusion and tension warring in her chest. Curtis nodded toward the police contact on his phone. "Call it in. Evidence, everything. Let him face justice, not our bullets." She exhaled slowly, lowering the gun. Finally, some sense in this madness. Curtis's eyes met hers, dark and intense. Not final, not yet, but a start. The storm of the night was far from over, but for the first time Maddie felt a glimmer of control, and a dangerous awareness of Curtis beside her, ever present, ever needed. The police arrived within minutes, sweeping through the estate and taking Damien Kessler into custody. Maddie and Curtis watched silently from the shadows as the man who had threatened to ignite another war was led away in handcuffs. Maddie's stomach still churned with adrenaline. "I can't believe it's over," she muttered, though she didn't sound convinced. Curtis didn't respond immediately. He kept his gaze on Kessler, his expression unreadable. Finally, he said, "It's over for now, but this doesn't erase everything he's done." "No," Maddie admitted. "It doesn't, and it certainly doesn't fix the mess between our families." Curtis glanced at her, eyes dark. "Which is why we can't go back yet." Maddie frowned. "Back where?" "To pretending nothing happened." He shook his head. "Back to normal. Back to the lies." "Not yet. We need leverage. We need strategy." Her lips pressed together. "And we need trust, apparently. Not sure I have any left for you." Curtis smirked faintly. "Trust isn't built in a night, Maddie. But necessity can force it." She looked away, focusing on the city skyline. Necessity. She hated that the word fit. Hated that she'd admit it. But Curtis was right, they were stuck together whether she liked it or not. And right now, survival meant relying on him. The drive back to her apartment was quiet, both lost in thought. Maddie's mind replayed every close call, every touch, every look. Curtis's presence was infuriating and magnetic all at once. She refused to acknowledge how much she depended on him tonight, refused to give him the satisfaction. Once inside, Maddie collapsed onto the sofa, exhaustion dragging her body down. Curtis remained standing, leaning against the doorway. "You should rest," he said. "You need it." "I don't need a babysitter," she shot back, but her voice was weaker than she intended. "I'm not babysitting," he said evenly. "I'm keeping you alive." Maddie's fingers twitched. "Don't get smug." Curtis's eyes flicked to hers, dark and unrelenting. "You don't get to tell me that." A tense silence fell, filled with unspoken words and shared history. Maddie felt the weight of it. Every old wound, every betrayal, every spark that had burned between them for years. Finally, she stood, pacing. "We can't keep doing this, running, hiding, pretending. Someone's going to get hurt. Or worse." Curtis followed her movement, keeping a calculated distance. "We'll handle it. Together. Like tonight." "Together?" she spat, almost bitterly. "Don't make me laugh." Curtis's lips twitched into a shadow of a smile. "You don't get to define together. Not anymore." Her chest tightened. She hated how much she wanted him to be right, how much she wanted to let him in. But she refused. She couldn't. "Get some sleep," he said finally, stepping toward the door. "We'll start planning tomorrow. Kessler's out of the picture, but the storm's just beginning." Maddie nodded, words caught in her throat. He left without another word, and she sank back onto the sofa, mind racing. Sleep came fitfully. Every shadow in her apartment felt alive. Every noise made her jump. Curtis's words echoed in her mind. Together. She hated the thought and craved it all at once. The next morning, Curtis arrived before she could even grab coffee. His expression was tense, his eyes unreadable. Maddie raised an eyebrow. "You look like hell," he said bluntly. "I feel like hell," she replied, not bothering to soften it. "We don't have time for hell," he said. "We have to plan. Kessler was only a piece of the puzzle. Someone else is pulling strings, and I want to know who." Maddie groaned, rubbing her temples. "Fine. But we do this my way." Curtis's lips twitched. "Your way? I thought we agreed on necessity." "My way keeps people alive," she said sharply. "Your way also keeps you stubborn," he countered. They spent the day in tense coordination, mapping out networks, tracing communications, and uncovering hidden assets. Each revelation made it clear that the enemy was more ruthless than either of them imagined. By late afternoon, Maddie leaned back, exhausted. "We're making progress, but it's never ending." Curtis nodded. "Progress is progress. We take it one step at a time." She glanced at him, noticing the sharp lines of his face, the intensity in his eyes. "You're driving me crazy," she muttered. "You're welcome," he said lightly, though the corner of his mouth betrayed nothing. Hours passed. Strategy became tense debates. Frustration flared. But amidst it all, a fragile rhythm formed. Curtis and Maddie moved around each other like predators circling, each testing limits, each pushing boundaries. When night fell, Maddie finally looked at Curtis. "Do you ever stop?" He tilted his head. "Stop what?" "Acting like this," she said, voice low. "Like you don't care. Like nothing touches you." Curtis's gaze softened for the briefest moment. "I care about survival, about winning, about keeping us alive." "Us," Maddie repeated, heart hammering. "Yes," he said. "Tonight, tomorrow, whenever. Us." Her breath hitched. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the weight of truth pressed on her chest. "Curtis." He stepped closer.
No buts, Maddie.
Just the truth. The tension between them crackled, thick and dangerous. She wanted to look away, to resist, but she couldn't. A sudden noise, metal scraping against concrete, snapped them back into reality. Maddie's gun was in her hand before she even realized it. Curtis mirrored her, every muscle coiled. Someone was watching. Someone knew where they were. Curtis whispered, "Stay calm. Move." They slipped out the back door, shadows again, adrenaline surging. Every sense screamed danger. Every glance between them was loaded, every touch electric. Maddie's mind raced, between the fear, the strategy, and Curtis beside her. She realized she hadn't felt this alive in years. The attraction simmered, dangerous and consuming. Curtis broke the silence. "We'll sleep when this is over. Until then, eyes open, heart locked down." Maddie smirked despite herself. "Locked down, huh?" "For now," he said, voice low. "But that might change." She didn't respond. Didn't need to. The tension, the fear, the unspoken pull between them said enough. They moved through the night, planning their next strike. Every shadow a potential threat, every whisper a warning. The city stretched before them, alive and dangerous. And in the darkness, Maddie realized that nothing, no fear, no anger, no history, could keep her from facing it with Curtis. For the first time in years, she understood that survival wasn't just about strategy. It was about trust, necessity, and the dangerous, thrilling pull of someone who understood the stakes as much as she did. Curtis glanced at her, catching the thought in her eyes. Careful, he murmured. You're thinking too much. Or not enough, she replied, meeting his gaze. He smiled faintly, dark and knowing. Maybe both. The night stretched on, tense and electric. As plans formed, secrets lingered, and a dangerous closeness grew between them. Maddie knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. And Curtis, for all his faults and secrets, was the only one she wanted at her side. The early morning fog clung to the city streets as Maddie and Curtis moved toward their final destination, Kessler's hidden server facility. Intelligence had confirmed it contained the last pieces of evidence tying him to both families' manipulations. If they destroyed it, the cycle of lies could finally end. Curtis checked his gun one last time. Once we go in, there's no turning back. Maddie swallowed, her pulse hammering. I've never backed down before. I'm not about to start now. He gave a short nod, his eyes lingering on hers. Good. Then let's finish this. They slipped inside the facility, shadows among shadows. Sensors hummed faintly, red lights blinking on panels along the walls. Maddie's heart raced as Curtis led her to the server room. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the shadows, another of Kessler's operatives. Maddie fired instinctively. The man crumpled, groaning, and Curtis moved like lightning, disarming and incapacitating him before he could react. Focus, Curtis whispered, eyes scanning the room. We're almost there. The server room door was massive, reinforced. Curtis pulled out tools, working quickly to bypass the lock. Maddie's gun never left her hand, scanning for threats. Almost. Got it? Curtis muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. Maddie's pulse thumped so loud she feared it would give them away. Come on, she urged. With a final click, the door swung open. Inside, racks of blinking servers hummed ominously. Curtis moved to the main terminal. This is it, he said. Maddie joined him, eyes scanning the screens. Everything Kessler touched, everything he manipulated. Curtis nodded. We erase it all. Destroy his leverage. Maddie hesitated, looking at him. You sure about this? He met her gaze. No one else will protect us. We do this or it never ends. Together, they began the process, erasing data, scrambling connections, leaving nothing for anyone to exploit. The tension between them was palpable, heightened by adrenaline, fear, and the unspoken pull that had been simmering since the hotel confrontation. Curtis stepped closer as Maddie worked, his shoulder brushing hers. She didn't flinch. Their proximity sent a jolt through her chest. Careful, he murmured. One misstep, and everything falls apart. I've handled worse, she whispered back, though her voice betrayed the racing of her heart. He didn't move away. His hand hovered near hers, almost brushing. Maddie caught her breath. The air between them was thick with tension. Danger, desire, and the years of rivalry and history boiling beneath the surface. Finally, the last file erased. Curtis exhaled, wiping his forehead. Done. Maddie stepped back, shaking slightly. Done. For a moment, silence filled the room. Just them, the hum of empty servers, and the weight of everything they had endured. Curtis looked at her, dark and intense. You made it through everything tonight. Every threat, every lie, every gun aimed at you. And yet, his gaze softened imperceptibly. Here you are, standing, still. Maddie's chest tightened. I could say the same about you. Their eyes locked, a charged moment suspended in time. The world outside could wait, the danger could wait, at least for a heartbeat. Curtis took a step closer, closing the space between them. Maddie's breath caught. She wanted to resist, wanted to deny the pull, but her body betrayed her. She didn't step back. I never thought, he murmured, voice low, that we'd end up here, like this. Maddie's lips parted. Neither did I. Curtis reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch lingered, gentle and deliberate. Maddie felt her knees weaken just slightly, her heartbeat hammering. Do you? He began, and then stopped, searching her eyes. Do you feel it too? Maddie swallowed. I can't say it's simple. He smirked faintly, leaning closer. Nothing about us is simple. The tension broke as sirens wailed in the distance. Police confirming Kessler had been fully apprehended. Justice finally catching up. Maddie and Curtis exchanged a glance. The world still dangerous, still uncertain. But in that moment there was clarity. Survival wasn't just about strategy. It was about trust, about connection, about facing the storm together. Curtis's hand brushed hers again, firmer this time. We'll handle the rest. Together. Maddie nodded, allowing herself a fleeting, dangerous smile. Together. The city lights began to shift with dawn as they stepped out of the facility. The weight of the past was still there, but for the first time the future felt theirs to claim, whether in strategy, in revenge, or in something dangerously close to desire. Curtis looked at her, eyes softening just slightly. You know, we make a good team. Maddie snorted. Don't get used to me saying that. He smirked. I'll take what I can get. The tension between them was no longer just about rivalry or survival. It was something deeper, something neither could ignore any longer. And as they walked side by side into the sunrise, Maddie realized that for the first time in years, the world felt a little less like a battlefield and a little more like possibility. For now, the war had ended. The lies had been exposed. And while danger would always lurk, one thing was certain. Maddie Crawford and Curtis Willburn were a force to be reckoned with together. Maddie glanced at Curtis, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Just don't think this means I trust you completely. Curtis grinned, just enough to make her heart skip. Wouldn't dream of it. They disappeared into the morning light, ready to face whatever came next. And somewhere in the distance, the city stirred, unaware that two of its most dangerous players had found an uneasy alliance and maybe, just maybe, something more. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more gripping dark romances and thrilling stories, don't forget to like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Urban Folks TV for more content. Your support keeps the stories coming.